So we're going to move right on and start with water and Mother Nature. So water and Mother Nature, this is about how things are supposed to work. Okay, they're not working very well, but they could. They could. So you are mostly water, and your body is almost 90% water. That water is in your cells, it's in your blood, it's in your organs and your tissues. They're full of water and they're surrounded by water. Okay? So, like I said earlier, water combined with salt is the main driver of all chemical transactions in the body. And I learned that the hard way. I started having joint problems, and when I had my blood and hair analyzed for heavy metals and critical nutrients, I had no sodium in my system. None. Well, tiny bit. They three, what do they call? 3 standard deviations away from the norm, below the norm. You can't live without salt. So it's the main driver of all the chemical transactions, and the water pressure is, especially if it's structured water, very nice. So when you don't have water and salt, then you will have an astounding number of diseases. And these are just a few. Chronic dehydration results in ulcers, rheumatoid arthritis, angina, high blood pressure, asthma, allergies, cholesterol goes up, chronic fatigue syndrome, depression, and diabetes. Those are the most common results. And that is, I mean, that's really too bad. Why do we need those things? We don't. We really don't. So this is Dr. Batmangalij. He was imprisoned for political reasons. Somewhere in Iran, I think, is the story. I read this a long time ago, and I'm not sure I've got all the details right, but I'll just tell the basics. So he was in a prison. They had terrible food. They had some water. It was poor water. There was no sanitation. It was cold. It was miserable. And he was a doctor, and he ended up, some prisoner came to him at one point bringing another prisoner. I guess they were dragging somebody who was in such terrible pain that he couldn't walk. And the prisoner who was dragging the guy who couldn't walk said, "Can't you do something?" And Dr. Batman, it was just like, oh my God, this is he's having kidney problems. He's he's this, he's that, whatever. The only thing he had and at his disposal at that moment was a glass of water on the table. He took that glass of water and he said to the guy who was suffering, "Drink this." And the guy drank the whole thing. And I forget the time frame, but within, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 minutes, the pain was gone. And Dr. Batman was like, "What happened? That was nothing but water." And when he got out of prison, he started researching water and the effects of dehydration. And he ended up writing 2 books. One of them, the second book, this is his second book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water. And he said every single function of the body is monitored and pegged to the flow of water. Water flows through cell walls via osmosis and generates voltage. And that voltage is converted and stored in energy pools in the form of ATP. adenosine triphosphate, and GTP, guanosine triphosphate. And those two things are like the cash used for cash flow in many of the chemical transactions in the body. Nothing's going to happen without that cash, without that ATP and GTP. You have to have it. And so if you, and let me say this, you can't get away with saying, well, there was water in that coffee, there was water in that tea, there was water in that juice, there was water in that fruit. No. The water in coffee and tea pulls water out of your tissues. Coffee and tea are diuretics. So are some fruits, especially grapefruit. So when you drink those things, you need to replace that water plus drink more. So it's really, the whole thing with water. People make all these reasons why they don't want to. Well, I have to go to the bathroom every time I turn around. Yup, that's right. You do. And when you exercise and get healthy, you don't have to run to the bathroom all the time. Your bladder begins to be able to hold more, and you are able to hold that for a little bit longer. So you cannot get around the need for body. So here's the thing. Here's one of the things that is absolutely critical. And this research was done by Walter Schauberger. He was one of those amazing scientific engineering geniuses in Germany who discovered so many things about water. Oh my gosh. There's almost too much to say. So I talked about it a little bit in Getting Well Naturally, but what he discovered was that the real important part of the hydrological cycle was once the rain hits the ground and soaks in. And he said, bottom line, when your water is dead, you will soon follow. What is living water and where can you find it? So one of the things to keep in mind is this entire cycle is what we learn in school. Okay, here's the water cycle. Water evaporates from the ocean and it becomes clouds and vapor. It also evaporates from plants and trees and, adds to the clouds and vapor. And then it hits a cool spot and it condenses. It condenses into rain or snow. And the water, that freezes becomes freshwater storage in the mountains. It's ice and snow. And when that melts little by little, it runs off and goes back to the river. And then from there back to the ocean. So that's really all they say about water in the, the water cycle. But that's not all there is. So the important part of the water cycle, this is what produces living water, is what happens once, that water hits the ground. Rainfall sinks through cool topsoil and down to layers of soil and rock, losing temperature as it goes, losing temperature quickly as it goes. It keeps on sinking down, and it sinks to the point that heat pressure rising from within the earth is equal to the atmospheric pressure pressing down. When it hits that point, that heat, it can't move. It tries to sink a little further. It can't move. It ends up turning into steam. As soon as it turns into steam, there's a chemical reaction that happens. And carbon and H2O, which is water, the chemical reaction is those turn to carbon dioxide and hydrogen, CO2, and 2 molecules of hydrogen. And that carbon dioxide and hydrogen gas, especially the hydrogen gas, they end up moving back upward now because gases are light. And they start to move back up through and to the root zone. And as the hot hydrogen gas begins rising, it interacts with minerals, stones, all kinds of carbon-based materials in the earth. And it dissolves these into itself and carries them upwards as mineral salts. Mineral salts. When it reaches that cool zone, kept kind of cool by the tree itself, the temperature change causes the mineral-laden hydrogen to start spinning with a left-hand spin. It starts to collapse in on itself. That is a left-hand spin. Coolness causes you to collapse in on yourself. So that left-hand spin is magnetic. Okay? We say it's centripetal. And that magnetism attracts oxygen. So now you have this hydrogen gas, mineral laden, with the molecules having a left-hand spin, attracting oxygen to itself, which then, that creates water. And that water is full of molecules with a left-hand spin. And that is what is known as living water. Schauberger called it mature water. So when that rises and comes out of the earth all by itself, you have living water.